Let us get into the last and final video lesson on Scrum Guide. So in video lesson 1, we discussed about the principles, the values, and the overview of Scrum. And through video lessons 2 and 3, we covered Scrum further. And in video lesson 4, our primary focus will be about the Scrum artifacts. So with this, we will be completing the Scrum Master training course. In case if you have not watched the video lessons 1, 2, and 3, my recommendation is to you is to go back to video lesson 1, 2, and 3, complete them, and then watch this video lesson. All these video lessons are available at scrumlands.org. Now let us get into the lesson. So at last we are into lesson 4 of 4. And here in this lesson, we'll be discussing about the Scrum artifacts. When we say artifacts, we have the product backlog. Then we have the sprint backlog. And we have the product increment. So basically in Scrum, we have only 3 artifacts. That is the product backlog, sprint backlog, and the product increment. Now, every artifact, it has a goal associated with it. Now, product backlog has a goal that is the product's goal. What is this product supposed to accomplish? Then we have sprint backlog, and that has a sprint goal. Basically, at the end of the sprint, what is that we must accomplish? So in the previous lesson, I explained the benefit of having a sprint goal. Maybe an analogy for this would be, now let us say we are doing the interior furnishing of an office, and we are using Scrum. Now we say that, okay, you do little bit of the visitors room and little bit of the dining room and little bit of the office room during the next sprint. At the end of it, we will not get any value except some partially completed things. But at the same time, if our sprint goal is to complete the training room in all aspects so that it is functional and we can start using it, then at the end of the sprint, we get the completely finished training room, which can deliver value to the customer. The customer can start using it. So that is the advantage of having a sprint goal. So whatever items we are including in the sprint goal will be cohesive enough to deliver value at the end of the sprint. Otherwise, we'll be just completing discrete pieces and the customer will not get any value at the end of the sprint. That is the purpose of the sprint goal. Product goal is also very, very important. What is this product supposed to accomplish? Because sometimes if the product development, if it is going to take a longer time, very often the product goal gets incremented or refined, or at least it will get challenged because of the market environment. Then the product increment. See, during the sprint, the product gets incremented. That means the the user stories or the product backlog items gets implemented during the sprint, and whatever meets the criteria or the definition of done, uh, that is that is that is considered as part of the increment. So a common definition of done is very important. A quick explanation of definition of done would be nobody will work on it again. It is ready for shipping at a feature level. Now, the key point number 17, please note it down. Every artifact has a goal associated with it. The product backlog is driven by the product goal. The sprint backlog is driven by the sprint goal, and the increment is driven by the definition of done. The next artifact is now we already discussed that the key artifacts are product backlog, uh, sprint backlog, and the product increment. These are the key artifacts. Now let us delve deep into the product backlog. The product backlog is an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. So it is a wish list of features. It is continuously evolving, and it is ordered based on priority. So we are talking about a list which gets continuously refined, one-liners basically. And it is a single source of work undertaken by the Scrum team. They don't have any other requirements document. Everything they do from the product backlog. The product backlog refinement is the act of breaking down and further defining the product backlog items into smaller, more precise items. So we may start with epics, which is at a very high level. Then epics gets broken down further into features, and features gets broken down into user stories, and stories may get broken down further into activities that need to be performed to really build it. So that is a continuous activity which is performed by the product owner, supported by the engineers. Attributes often vary with the domain of work. Yeah, so if you are doing Scrum for a marketing project, then the attributes will be different. If you are doing Scrum for software development project, then the attributes can be different. It can be function points and stuff like that. The developers who will be doing the work are responsible for sizing. So this is one area which need to be focused, because very often when we start Scrum, the estimates are done by the Scrum Master and it is thrusted upon to the team. And here, very explicitly, it is mentioned that the sizing or the estimation of the product backlog must be done by technical people who are developers who understands it. The product goal is in the product backlog, and the product goal is the long-term goal for the team. The team should work towards a single product goal. We cannot have multiple product goals. It is one single product backlog, one single product goal, and one single product owner. So that's how it is done. Key point here, the product backlog contains the product goal is in the product backlog, and the product goal is the long-term goal for the team. At the end of at the end of all the sprints, what is that we must be accomplishing? That must be very, very clear. Because I've come across many projects, at least one major project, where by the time they completed the product, nobody wanted it. So having a very clear-cut product goal, because sometimes that needs revision. You may start with one product goal, and the product will pivot during the course of development. You may see the product owner may see better opportunities for the product. So the product goal may change during the course of the development of the product. Now let us get into try to understand the sprint backlog a little more. The sprint backlog is composed of the sprint goal, like why are we doing the sprint? At the end of the sprint, what is that we are trying to accomplish? It is a set of product backlog items for the sprint. So in reality, the product owner prioritizes the features and say, in this particular sprint, these are the things I want. So it is a product backlog is a list of prioritized items. An actionable plan for delivering the increment. How this is going to be accomplished. So that will happen at the end of the sprint planning meeting, whereas the sprint goal might be defined before the sprint planning meeting, and which may get revised during the sprint planning meeting. And we have the product backlog items. Again, the first cut is proposed by the product owner even before the sprint planning meeting, and during the sprint planning meeting, this may get refined or revised. And at the end of the sprint planning meeting, the entire team, at the end of the sprint planning meeting, the whole team comes out with a plan to convert the sprint backlog into an increment of the product which meets the definition of done. Then the sprint backlog is a plan by and for the developers. It is a highly visible real-time picture of the work that the developers plan to accomplish during the sprint in order to achieve the sprint goal defined and included in the sprint backlog. Sprint goal is defined and included in the sprint backlog, and the sprint backlog is updated throughout the sprint. So basically we have a board, the sprint tracking board, where we have by default 3 columns, that is to be done, being done, and done. And the items to be developed will be here, and when somebody works on it, it is moved here. When it meets the definition of done, it is moved here. So this is a reflection of what is really happening during the sprint. And it should have enough detail that they can inspect their progress in the daily Scrum. So we said in the product backlog, we have a very abridged version of the requirement. Generally, it will be one-liners, whereas when it comes to sprint planning, that must be elaborated further. So one tool which the Scrum guide doesn't propose any tool, but what I've seen is the commonly used tool for elaborating the product backlog items with more details is the user stories. which will have enough detail, because typically user stories will have a header of the feature to be developed. Then it will have a detailed body which explains what is the feature, what must be accomplished by the feature, and then there is a section for conversations. That means whenever somebody has a doubt about the functionality, that Q&A gets captured in the conversations. And towards the end, there is a set of acceptance criteria or definition of done is also defined as part of the user story. So the complete thing uh, put together, it becomes okay. I lost the sequence 1 minute. So we discussed this, and yeah, we were discussing about the sprint backlog. Yes. So the sprint backlog should have enough detail that they can inspect their progress in the daily Scrum. So as we discussed, generally people use user stories. I already explained the contents of a user story. Sometimes people attach a wireframe to explain the feature. Sometimes they use case diagrams. So the Scrum guide doesn't propose any one particular tool. The team has the freedom to choose the tool to elaborate the product backlog entries into more detail, so that which has sufficient information for the developers to size it or estimate it. The key point 18, the sprint goal. The sprint goal is updated throughout the sprint as more details evolve. Then the product increment is a concrete stepping stone towards the product goal. Each increment is integrated into previous increments. That means, let us say we are on the 5th sprint and we have completed some features which meets the definition of done. Then we should integrate it with the product which is built till that sprint. That means if you're in the 5th sprint, we would have created a product till the 4th sprint. So this new feature also must be integrated with that, and nothing should break. Yeah, otherwise it will be only an illusion of progress. So the increment is integrated to previous increments. All increments must work together. The increment must be usable and valuable. Multiple increments may be created within a sprint. The sum of the increments is presented in the sprint review. Increment may be delivered to stakeholders prior to the end of the sprint. The sprint review is never a gate for releasing value. Only those work meeting the definition of done is considered part of the sprint. Only those work meeting the definition of done is considered part of the increment. The key point 19, the product increment, a concrete stepping stone must meet the definition of done. Then what is definition of done? The definition of done is a formal description of the quality measures required. The moment the product backlog item meets the definition of done, an increment is born. If a product backlog item does not meet the definition of done, it cannot be released or even presented in the sprint review. Instead, it returns to the product backlog for future consideration. So definition of done and the common understanding of definition of done is very, very critical for a meaningful Scrum or for getting value from Scrum. So if each person has his own perception about the definition of done, then we are heading towards danger. So there should be a common definition of done. And whenever we say that something is done, it is assumed that all the checks as part of the definition of done is completed and it's successful. That's why the feature is completed. Now, so we started with the product backlog, then the sprint planning, sprint backlog, sprinting, the daily scrum, the product increments, the sprint reviews, and the sprint retrospectives. We also said that the Scrum team comprised of the product owner, Scrum master, and the developers. So this is the overall view of the Scrum. The moment the product backlog item meets the definition of done, an increment is born. That is fine. Now, to conclude, before I conclude, there is no partial Scrum. Either you do it in its entirety or you don't do it. It must be implemented completely. Scrum will act as a container for additional practices. The Scrum guide just defines the Scrum framework. As and when, or if the team feels that, okay, some additional practices must be included for delivering better value, you are free to do so. But the Scrum framework cannot be altered. That remains non-negotiable. You should have a product backlog. You should have sprint planning meetings. You should have sprint backlogs. You should sprint. You should have daily scrums or daily meetings. You should have formal sprint reviews, and you should have sprint retrospectives. The sprint duration is non-negotiable. Time is non-negotiable, and this much we should follow in every Scrum. Otherwise, it is not Scrum. If you want to earn a certificate after completing lesson 1 to 4, you can scroll down and earn the certificate of completion by completing the assessment. The link is provided in the details of this video. Or if you want to gain more insight about the activities we are doing, plus this training as well as the additional services we are offering, please visit us at scrumlands.org. That is our website. And I hope you got good value from these lessons. And if you have any questions, please do post it as a comment at the end of these videos, and we will answer them. Uh, yeah, this is a free training we are offering because the most common problem Scrum teams are facing is they have not read the Scrum guide even once. This is a common sense which is not very common. Forget about a big training, formal training and stuff like that. At least every team member should have understood the Scrum guide before embarking a Scrum into a Scrum project. So our effort through this training was to introduce you to Scrum as per the Scrum guide. And we also do additional services like senior management orientation, then on-the-job training or mentoring or coaching when the teams really practice Scrum. And we also provide sustainability services in the sense people happily embark onto Scrum. After some time, they fall back into waterfall ways. So we need a push again till it becomes part of the culture or the DNA of the organization. So we provide those services as well. And we'll be adding more and more services similar to this into our portfolio. So please do visit us at scrumlands.org so that you will get all the information. So this training program is a free training program, and this is a great tool for all the Scrum Masters uh, to get their team members trained before putting them onto real life projects. So if anybody, if they can go through from lesson 1 to lesson 4 and complete the assessments, I'm sure that they will have a better understanding of Scrum than without these things. So that was the goal of this particular training program. And please use it as much as possible. And I'll be happy to get your feedback also. Maybe you can post it as a comment at the end of this video. So happy Scrumming. Thank you very much for watching.